May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer.
Amen.
Please be seated. So, a little over a year ago now, as part of my clinical pastoral education, I was in a summer internship in the chaplain department at Mary Washington Hospital in Fredericksburg, Virginia. It was early on in my season there, and it was during one of my first overnight shifts. Sadly, due to a tragic circumstance, 3 unrelated people passed on during that night. This was my first time in that sort of pastoral situation, and it was a very difficult night. The next morning, without having had any sleep, I went to the chapel, which was located on the 2nd floor of the hospital, and I used that short hour before classes began to sit and pray. It was a small and quiet space, and there was one of those large print Bibles that was laying face down in the center pulpit. Still in kind of a haze, I went to the book and I opened it up from the back, and I landed on today's reading from Revelation. After being witness to much grief and love and sadness and pain, that night before, I read these words. See, the home of God is among mortals. He will dwell with them as their God. They will be his people, and God himself will be with them. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. Death will be no more. Mourning and crying and pain will be no more, for the first things have passed away. And the one who was seated on the throne said, See, I am making all things new. I found in that moment, and still find today, great comfort and hope in these words. Comfort in the understanding that God's dwelling place is among mortals, and hope in the knowledge that the Lord is making all things new. And for me, this comfort and hope are seen and made manifest in today's gospel reading. On first hearing the gospel, I imagine that there must have been many emotions and tears of sorrow among Martha, Mary, and all the friends that had gathered at Bethany by the time Jesus and his disciples had arrived. Mary echoes words previously stated by her sister when she says, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. It is hard to guess what she was feeling in that moment. Perhaps she is curious why he arrived later than expected. Or perhaps there was some resentment behind the words, like she was saying, Lord, why weren't you here when we needed you? Or perhaps it was simply a statement of faith and trust in Jesus. Likewise, those who were present asked, could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying? I wonder also what they were feeling. Was it an angry accusation of what they perceived to be Jesus' lack of empathy? Were they doubtfully questioning the ability of Jesus to heal? The text is not explicit about what the emotions and motivations of those who were present were. But as is common with a community that is grieving, I imagine there was probably a mixture of emotions like there are today. Anger, sorrow, love, resentment, confusion, joy, sadness. There was probably an amalgam of feelings that allowed some to ask, could he not have kept this man from dying, while at the same time others proclaimed, see how much he loved him? Really, the only one whose emotions and feelings are made explicit in this account is Jesus. We are told that he is greatly disturbed in spirit. We are told that he is deeply moved when he witnesses the pain and sorrow of the people that have gathered to mourn. And we are told that he cries. He cries, his tears flowing freely for his dear friend as they approach the tomb. His love for Lazarus and his family is palpable to many that are present. Yet even though Jesus knows what will happen, he knows what he will do, and he knows how this story will end. he is still fully present with them. Jesus feels with them. There are no efforts on his part to stop their tears, to rebuke them, or to quiet their suffering. Rather, with his tears, the Word incarnate enters into their grief and joins in their suffering. God's dwelling place is among mortals, even in their grief, even in the hard times, perhaps especially during these times. And this brings me comfort. But this is only the beginning of the good news. Hope makes an appearance here as well. The hope for life appears in our gospel account as all the apparent obstacles that stand in the way of new creation are removed. The immensely heavy stone in front of the tomb, the stench of death, the linen wrappings that bound the body of the one that all thought to be dead. Jesus brings forth and displays abundant life with just 3 words: Lazarus, come out. And the obstacles are removed, and the possibility of new life in Jesus is made apparent. Through Jesus, we are free to live in the hope of resurrection, where death no longer holds the power of fear over us. And in this moment, this hope is made apparent not just for the future eschaton, after the earthly life ends, but also in the present moment for those who are grieving. Jesus, who has proclaimed himself to be resurrection and life, embodies God's victory over death. Jesus brings hope to those who are mourning. He brings recreation and the possibility of abundant life to those present who, quite honestly, must have felt like their world was ending. This is another part of the good news, that God is not only with us in our suffering, but that there's also a way through it. That even though it might be hard to see at the time, there is the opportunity for new life on the other side. In our darkest moments, we can see a light at the end of the tunnel. Life and love continue, and we find a sustaining hope in the resurrection. I feel that these are the 2 miracles that are expressed in our Revelation text and made manifest in our gospel. There is the miracle of hope, in that there will be a resurrection, a new heaven, a new earth, a new creation, new life at the end of it all. And the miracle of comfort, that God dwells with us, that we are a holy people and God is our God. Jesus is with us in our suffering, in our distress, and in our confusion. Hope and comfort are what I hear in these texts. And I think that this makes these appropriate readings for All Saints' Day, as today we reflect on the holy lives and celebrate those who have walked in the love of Christ, often in times of sorrow and in the face of death. We acknowledge that cloud of witnesses surrounding us, many of whom have departed from this physical realm. Now they exist beyond the intersection of faith in the presence of God and the gift of hope. These saints remind us of the transformative power of faith and the enduring light of the resurrection, inspiring us to live and love with purpose in our lives. Today, we honor their legacy and the profound impact that they continue to have on our spiritual journey. All those holy saints, apostles, martyrs, our family, our friends, and neighbors that cheer us on from the other side. We celebrate our communion with the saints above as the citizens of the New Jerusalem, where mourning, crying, and pain are no more, and know that death has been defeated through Jesus. And that really is something to celebrate. So yes, that was a difficult night at the hospital. But something else happened the next day. I was in the chaplain's break room, having yet another cup of coffee in hopes of waking myself up, when a certain lullaby began to play on the intercom system. This was the hospital's tradition when a baby had just been born. It felt like in that moment a tangible reminder to me that life and love continue. And I experienced again that spiritual hope and comfort and I heard anew the words that I had read in that large print Bible in the chapel. See, I am making all things new. Amen.
Amen.